In the endless galaxy, where the light of distant stars pierces through the vast darkness, a new threat has emerged, a plague unlike anything ever recorded. The Veltrux, renowned for their superior intelligence and mission to preserve peace, now face an unprecedented challenge. The Nytherian Plague, a highly destructive pathogen, has transcended the borders of space, ravaging dozens of star systems and reducing every civilization it encounters to ashes within mere hours. Aboard the Agerion, the largest warship of the Veltrux fleet, Supreme Commander Colonel Vorax stood before a colossal hollow screen displaying the rapid spread of the plague across the galaxy. Each red dot on the map represented a once thriving planet, now a lifeless wasteland. Streams of data scrolled across the screen. Mortality rate, 100%. Incubation period, 2 hours. Transmission, airborne and physical contact. Colonel, a towering Veltrux with glowing silver eyes, his face etched with concern, turned to his team. We are facing something beyond the bounds of science. Preliminary studies show that this virus not only destroys the host's body but also intervenes at a genetic level, causing every cell to self-destruct within a short time. Preeler, the lead biologist, lowered his head in thought. Commander, no species has ever survived infection. But we've received a signal from a human ship, the Eclipse Voyager, reporting exposure to the virus, and they remain alive. Colonel furrowed his brows, his silver eyes gleaming with skepticism. Humans. Those fragile and chaotic beings survived the Nytherian Plague. Preeler nodded, his bioluminescent wings glowing faintly. Precisely. The signal from the Eclipse Voyager indicates that their entire crew has been infected. Yet, instead of collapsing like other species, they are reporting only mild symptoms, fever, fatigue, and a runny nose. A heavy silence filled the command room as the information sank in. Every Veltrux present, from scientists to warriors, exchanged incredulous looks. Colonel broke the silence with a firm voice. Establish contact with the Eclipse Voyager immediately. We need to understand why they are immune to this virus. A holographic link was established, and the image of Captain Amelia Foster, commander of the Eclipse Voyager, appeared. Her sharp eyes scanned the Veltrux Council, her expression calm but showing traces of exhaustion. Behind her, the human crew continued their work, some coughing lightly or wiping their noses, but none appeared to be on the brink of death. Colonel Vorax leaned forward, his commanding voice resonating. Captain Foster, I am Colonel Vorax, commander of the Agerion, representing the Veltrux peacekeeping fleet. We have been tracking the spread of the Nytherian Plague. How is it that humanity has survived? Amelia shrugged, a faint smile playing on her lips. We don't have a definitive answer, but to us, what you call the deadliest plague in the galaxy, feels more like a common cold. For a moment, the command room erupted in murmurs. Colonel raised a hand, signaling silence. A common cold? That is impossible. This virus has decimated the strongest civilizations we've ever known. Amelia maintained her composure. Our medical team has conducted basic tests. It appears that the human immune system operates in a chaotic yet effective manner. The virus cannot adapt to its diversity and rapid response. Preeler stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. A chaotic immune system? Would you be willing to allow us to study human biology to find a way to replicate this capability for other species? Amelia nodded slowly. We're willing to cooperate, but you must respect our boundaries. This is not an unconditional gift. Colonel turned to his team. If we can understand how humans resist, we could save the entire galaxy. But no one must be complacent. Humans may be fragile, but their chaos is precisely what we must be wary of. The meeting quickly transitioned into detailed planning. A Veltrix research team was assigned to board the Eclipse Voyager to conduct experiments under human supervision. Meanwhile, Carnal ordered reconnaissance ships to monitor the virus's progress and ensure the safety of both sides. Despite the agreement, doubt lingered within the Veltrix ranks. Some senior officers warned that the virus might be adapting to humanity, waiting for the perfect moment to make them ideal hosts. Others feared that this cooperation could expose Veltrix vulnerabilities to a species infamous for its unpredictability. Meanwhile, aboard the Eclipse Voyager, Amelia wasn't entirely trusting of the Veltrix either. She thought to herself, are they truly trying to save the galaxy, or are they simply looking to turn us into tools for their war? Both sides understood that this partnership was a double-edged sword. But with billions of lives across the galaxy at stake, no one could afford to refuse this fragile chance. The race to decode the Nytherian Plague had officially begun, and it was not just a battle against a virus, it was a test of trust and compassion between species. Aboard the Agerion, Colonel Vorax stood deep in thought in the command room, staring at a three-dimensional image of the planet Trachoris, which had once been the center of the greatest civilization in the Xantar system. Just weeks ago, the planet had shone brightly with life, but now, red dust storms ravaged its surface, leaving no sign of life. The Nytherian Plague had turned Trachoris into a graveyard, much like the dozens of worlds before it. What troubled Carnal the most was not the speed of the virus's spread but what had just been reported. Humanity, one of the most vulnerable species according to the Veltrix, was only experiencing mild symptoms. This data was not just an anomaly, it was a piece of the puzzle that could change the entire survival war. Commander, we've further analyzed the signals from the human ship, the Eclipse Voyager, Preler said, breaking the silence in the room. The lead Veltrix biologist's voice betrayed his tension. The data confirms that all crew members were exposed to the virus. Yet, instead of destroying them, the virus was suppressed by the human immune system. Another officer, Lyrex, shook his head in disbelief. How could this be? The Trachoris species is superior to humans in both strength and intelligence, yet they were wiped out in 3 hours. That is what we need to find out, Carnal replied, his voice steady but resolute. We cannot allow the galaxy to collapse without doing anything. He ordered an urgent communication channel to be opened with Captain Amelia Foster, the commander of the Eclipse Voyager. A three-dimensional image of Foster appeared on the screen, her face calm but with a hint of wariness in her eyes. Commander Vorax, Amelia spoke first, I assume you're contacting me because you want to know why we're still alive. Exactly. The Veltrix need answers, Carnal said, his gaze probing. The Nytherian Plague has wiped out dozens of civilizations, yet humanity is only experiencing mild symptoms. This is not just abnormal, it's the only opportunity we have to stop this disaster. Foster tilted her head, a flicker of amusement in her sharp eyes. I think the Veltrix have underestimated us for too long. Maybe it's time for you to reconsider that. Carnal remained silent for a moment, then interjected firmly, this is not the time for prideful arguments. We want to know, what in human biology allowed you to survive? Amelia nodded and signaled for the ship's chief medical officer, Dr. Helen Carter, to join the call. Dr. Carter, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, appeared beside Amelia in the hologram. The human immune system is one of the most complex systems in nature, Carter began. Instead of functioning as a perfect system, it operates like a chaotic battlefield where billions of immune cells fight, sometimes even against the body itself. The Nytherian Plague, based on our initial analysis, seems unable to cope with this chaos. It doesn't have time to adapt before being destroyed. Preeler, monitoring the meeting from the Agerian, interjected, "Can you provide genetic samples or data on the immune system for us to study?" Foster shook her head, her gaze turning sharp. "I understand the need for cooperation, but it must be done within limits. I cannot allow you to fully decode human biology, as it could be abused." The meeting continued under a cloud of tension. While Foster and Carnell both understood the need for cooperation, each had their own calculations. Carnell couldn't shake off the old stories, where humans were always seen as unreliable and prone to acting on emotion. Foster, on the other hand, suspected that the Veltrix would use the data gathered to gain an advantage in the future. Nevertheless, an agreement was reached. A Veltrix research team would be allowed to board the Eclipse Voyager to take samples and conduct experiments, but everything would be done under the close supervision of the humans. When the Veltrix research team arrived aboard the Eclipse Voyager, they were immediately struck by the way humans managed chaos. The narrow hallways echoed with the laughter of the crew, mixed with the sounds of coughing and sneezing, but no one seemed to be afraid. They met Dr. Carter in the laboratory, where blood samples from the crew had already been prepared. Initial data shows that the human immune system not only destroys the virus but also stores genetic information about it, Carter explained, pointing to a screen displaying a complex DNA sequence. This creates a biological weapon vault that we call immune memory. Preeler, watching closely, murmured, "This ability could be the key to creating a vaccine or even synthetic antibodies." But as they delved deeper into the analysis, an unexpected discovery emerged. Within the human genome, there was evidence of an alien gene sequence. Preeler froze as he realized that this code was not human, it came from an extraterrestrial origin. "What is this?" he asked, his voice full of suspicion. Carter frowned. "We don't know. It could be an ancient mutation or something that was implanted into our genes a long time ago." This discovery raised a new wave of questions. Could this alien gene be the reason humanity is immune to the Nytherian Plague? If so, what is its origin, and why is it present only in humans? When Carnell received the report, a sense of unease swept over him. The Nytherian Plague had already been a mystery, but now, humanity and their origins had become just as unpredictable. The only thing he was sure of was that this war was far more complicated than he had ever imagined. The Agerian silently approached the Eclipse Voyager, its powerful, angular form standing out against the dark expanse of space. Inside the ship, Carnell Vorax observed the docking process, his eyes filled with determination but also a hint of unease. Humanity, with all its anomalies, had now become the only hope for the Veltrix and perhaps the entire galaxy to find a way to fight back against the Nytherian Plague. As the passageway between the two ships was established, Carnell led the Veltrix scientific team aboard the Eclipse Voyager. The interior of the human ship surprised them. They had expected to enter a place of chaos and disarray, but instead, they were met with an orderly, vibrant atmosphere. The crew, despite many of them coughing or looking fatigued, still seemed optimistic, chatting and laughing. Dr. Helen Carter, the science officer of the Eclipse Voyager, stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome aboard our ship. I hope you're prepared for a journey full of discoveries." Observing the battlefield within the human body. As soon as they entered the ship's laboratory, the Veltrix team was immediately impressed by the technology and data displayed throughout. Helen led them to a large screen, where a three-dimensional video illustrated the human immune response when faced with the Nytherian Plague virus. "The first thing you need to know," Helen began, "is that the human immune system is unlike anything you've encountered before. The 3D image showed the virus invading an individual's body. Initially, the virus seemed to spread rapidly, but then, human immune cells appeared like a chaotic army, attacking in all directions. Instead of having a clear strategy, the immune system seemed to try everything, even generating extreme reactions like high fevers and inflammation. Each human reacts to the virus differently, Helen explained. No two people have the exact same immune response. This creates an unpredictable environment, preventing the virus from adapting. Preeler, the lead Veltrix scientist, watched intently. But this doesn't seem efficient. I see that the immune cells even attack healthy cells. Helen nodded. Exactly. Our immune system is dangerous, even to ourselves. Sometimes it can cause self-destruction. But it's this chaos that keeps the virus from adapting. It's destroyed before it can understand our defense mechanisms. Lyrex, another member of the Veltrix team, asked, but why is it only humanity that has this trait? Other species, like Trachhories, have superior immune systems, but they were wiped out quickly. Helen paused thoughtfully. We don't know the exact reason. But it's possible that humans evolved in an environment full of fluctuations, facing thousands of bacteria and viruses every day. Our bodies became accustomed to adapting quickly, even if it sometimes leads to chaos. Preeler continued, so, what other civilizations have always viewed as a disadvantage, chaos is actually the key to survival. Helen smiled. Exactly. What you call chaos, we call survival. While the Veltrix team continued their research, a new discovery began to make the atmosphere in the lab tense. As they delved deeper into the crew's blood samples, an alien gene sequence appeared similar to their earlier finding, but now much clearer. This is alien DNA, Preeler confirmed, his eyes flashing with concern. It doesn't belong to humans. What is it, and how do you have it? Helen frowned. We're still researching. It's possible this is part of an ancient legacy, left behind from some extraterrestrial contact in the past. Or, Carnal interjected, his voice deep with thought, it could have been deliberately implanted into your bodies. If that's the case, the question isn't just who did this, but why. As this discovery was revealed, the tension between the two groups escalated. Carnal couldn't help but suspect that humanity might be hiding something. The strange immune system and the alien gene sequence were too coincidental to be random. He wondered if the Nytherian Plague was a biological weapon designed to target other species, with humanity being an exception for reasons they didn't know or perhaps didn't want to reveal. Helen, sensing the rising tension, tried to calm things down. Remember, we all share the same goal, to find a way to combat the virus. If we don't cooperate, we'll all be wiped out. Carnal nodded, but his gaze betrayed his doubts. He knew that to resolve this crisis, he needed answers not just from Helen or Foster, but perhaps from the very mysterious past of humanity. At the end of the research day, another unexpected discovery occurred. When the Nytherian Plague virus came into contact with the human blood samples, it didn't just get destroyed, it began to alter its genetic structure. Some samples showed that the virus was starting to adapt, but not to wipe out humanity. Instead, it seemed to be evolving to survive within their bodies, becoming a form of symbiosis. Helen was astonished. If this continues, the virus may no longer be our enemy. It could become a part of us. Preeler's voice grew somber. But what does that mean? A new form of evolution? A hidden danger we don't fully understand. Carnal stared at the screen, feeling that this story had many more layers than they had yet uncovered. The virus, humanity, and the galaxy itself, everything seemed to be part of a much larger game, where every answer led to even more questions. In the pitch-black void of a distant galaxy, the Veltrix warship Agerion and the human exploration vessel Eclipse Voyager temporarily docked, like two predators taking a brief pause from battle. Though doubt still lingered, Colonel Vorax's offer of an alliance, the commander of Veltrix, could not be refused given the current desperate situation. Lena Carter, the captain of Eclipse, stared directly into Colonel's eyes through the comms screen, her voice calm yet resolute. If this is humanity's only chance to survive, and possibly the entire galaxies, then I agree, Lena said, pausing for a moment before adding, but we are not to be exploited, Colonel. The sound of mechanical systems hummed as the bridge between the two ships was activated. It was a temporary yet sturdy structure, symbolizing a fragile yet hopeful alliance. The Veltrix science team, led by Preler, stepped onto the Eclipse Voyager. Their shining armor reflected the white light in the human ship's corridors, creating a surreal scene, as if two opposing worlds were blending together. In the central lab, Dr. Helen Carter, Lena's sister, and the lead scientist aboard the Eclipse, waited with her team. Helen watched Preler with an openly curious gaze. Upon closer inspection, she realized that the eyes of the Veltrix seemed to contain a depth of knowledge far beyond human understanding. Let me make this clear, Helen spoke firmly, all data and research results will be shared openly between both parties. No one is allowed to use these discoveries for military or personal gain. Preler responded with a faint smile. Science knows no borders, Dr. Carter. We only seek ways to preserve life. Human blood samples were quickly placed into the Veltrix analyzer, an advanced machine capable of recreating molecular structures in a simulated environment. Data from the machine began to appear on the 3D screen. Helen and Preler stood side by side, eyes fixed on the rotating protein chain, glowing like a small star. A protein never seen before, Preler murmured, his gaze unbroken from the screen. Its structure is unstable but incredibly flexible, almost as if it's designed to adapt to any environment. Helen nodded. This is why the human immune system can cope with viruses. This protein acts as a translator, relaying information between immune cells and guiding them in their response. Preler furrowed his brow, sliding his finger across the screen to zoom in on a section of the protein chain. But this structure, it's something else. It's not just natural. Perhaps this is the result of some genetic intervention long ago, possibly from another civilization. Helen turned to look at Preler, her expression thoughtful. So, you've noticed it too. But the question is, who created it and for what purpose? As research progressed, tensions between the two sides began to surface. Some Veltrix members, who viewed humans as a barbaric species, couldn't hide their discomfort at working alongside them. On the other hand, some members of the Eclipse crew distrusted the Veltrix, fearing they might exploit this discovery for military advantage. In a brief meeting between Colonel and Lena, the two commanders faced these tensions head-on. I don't want petty conflicts to ruin our one chance, Colonel said, his voice deep yet resolute. We are facing a threat that could wipe out the entire galaxy. Lena crossed her arms, her gaze sharp. I agree, but your team needs to understand that we are not test subjects. If anyone on your side crosses a line, this alliance ends immediately. Colonel stared at Lena for a long moment, then nodded. Agreed. After hours of research, a significant breakthrough was made. Preler and Helen discovered that when a human protein molecule was combined with Veltrix cells in the experimental environment, they began to create a powerful antivirus reaction. This opened the possibility of creating a serum that could save both species. But just as hope began to rise, another unexpected discovery silenced the lab. The Nytherian Plague virus, not only destroyed, seemed to merge with the human protein, creating a new form of life. The test sample began to exhibit signs of rudimentary consciousness, a phenomenon never before recorded in any research. "What have we done?" Helen gasped, her eyes glued to the screen. Preeler remained silent, his eyes flashing with concern. "Perhaps we've unleashed a new form of life. Something we don't fully understand yet." When information about the test sample leaked, skeptical members of both sides began using it as an excuse to oppose the alliance. A small faction within the Veltrix believed that humanity had intentionally hidden their abilities to create a strategic advantage. Meanwhile, some members of the Eclipse crew feared that Veltrix might turn this discovery into a biological weapon. Carnell called an emergency meeting with Lena and the key members of both sides. He stood before the display screen showing the new virus sample, his eyes tired but still filled with determination. "We have no choice," he said, his voice ringing out forcefully. "If we don't continue cooperating, the virus will destroy us all. But if we're not careful, what we're creating could be a threat greater than the Nytherian Plague." Lena scanned the room, her gaze sweeping over every face. "We stand at a crossroads in history. I'm not asking you to fully trust Veltrix, but remember, the future of the entire galaxy depends on what we do right now." Though tensions were far from gone, both sides decided to continue their cooperation. But they understood that this alliance was temporary. A greater threat was slowly forming, not only from the virus but also from the mysteries surrounding it. Questions about the origin of the strange protein, the true purpose of the alliance, and the new form of life that was developing would continue to haunt them in the days to come. A tense, expectant atmosphere filled the main laboratory aboard the Agerion. The Veltrix and human science teams had been working tirelessly for days, their screens displaying continuous simulations and experiments. After dozens of failed attempts, a positive result finally appeared on the 3D screen before them. The Nytherian Plague virus had been completely neutralized in the simulated environment. "We did it," Preeler said, his voice soft but filled with emotion. His bright eyes briefly sparkled with relief. Around him, the two science teams stood silent for a moment before eruptions of cheers filled the room. Helen Carter, standing beside Preeler, exhaled deeply. She turned to Preeler, a tired smile spreading across her face. "This isn't just a medical miracle. This is a declaration that cooperation can overcome even the deepest divides." The previous days had been anything but easy. The synthetic method developed by Veltrix, based on data from the human immune system, was not just an ordinary antiviral drug. First, they had to create a compound that could mimic the way human proteins interacted with immune cells. This required analyzing and recreating billions of molecular structures in a controlled environment. Preeler, with decades of experience in galactic biology, led the Veltrix team. He realized that the human protein structure was not only flexible but also capable of deceiving the Nytherian virus, preventing it from adapting. They used advanced Veltrix technology to synthesize an artificial version of this protein, naming it Catalyst N01. This was the first compound capable of attacking the virus's RNA core without leaving any signs for the virus to adapt. Helen played a crucial role in fine-tuning the microfactors, using her knowledge of the unique human immune mechanisms. She was the first to recognize that human proteins needed to be combined with specific Veltrix enzymes to achieve maximum efficacy. This combination led to the breakthrough. The pivotal moment came when they decided to test Catalyst N01 on a live virus sample, something no one had dared to do before. Helen and Preeler supervised the process together while both teams carefully monitored the data. "Activate the protection protocol," Helen said, her eyes glued to the screen as the virus sample came into contact with Catalyst N01. Within minutes, what happened on the screen left everyone breathless. The virus began to break down. Its RNA strands were shattered, disintegrating into harmless molecules. But what surprised everyone the most was the speed. Catalyst N01 not only destroyed the virus but also dismantled it faster than any known method. Preeler looked at the data, his voice filled with awe. This is not just a victory over the Nytherian Plague. This is the gateway to a new era in galactic medicine. Even with the successful development of Catalyst N01, the teams quickly realized that mass production and deployment would not be easy. The Nytherian virus had spread across hundreds of planets, and producing enough Catalyst N01 in large quantities was a monumental challenge. The Veltrix team suggested using their advanced nanotechnology to produce the compound at the molecular level. Helen and the human team agreed, but they also recognized the need for a broader approach. Humans proposed using production centers on Earth and their colonies to create larger quantities of Catalyst N01, while Veltrix would handle distribution through their galactic network. While cooperation was smooth on the surface, underlying tension simmered between the two sides. Some Veltrix members began to question whether humans should be trusted with the full technology of the production process, while some members of the human crew worried that Veltrix might use Catalyst N01 as a tool to consolidate galactic power. In a private meeting, Preeler openly raised the issue with Colonel Vorax. "We are entering a critical moment. If we cannot control greed and suspicion, Catalyst N01 could become the cause of a new war instead of the solution." Colonel was silent for a long moment before responding. "I understand, Preeler. But without humans, I fear we would never have created this. This is a lesson for Veltrix that we are not the center of the universe." After weeks of continuous work, the first batch of Catalyst N01 was sent out to be tested on virus-infected planets. The results exceeded all expectations. The mortality rate from the virus dropped to almost zero within hours. For many, this was a miracle. Lena Carter looked over the screen displaying the reports, a deep sense of pride swelling inside her. But she couldn't help but think of the warning from Helen. "We've created something that can save the galaxy," Helen said to her sister in a private conversation. "But do you think that, one day, someone will try to turn it into a weapon?" Lena paused, her gaze serious. "We can only do our best to prevent that from happening. But you're right, every miracle comes with a risk." In the vastness of space, as Catalyst N01 began to spread hope across the infected planets, the shadows of greed and conflict quietly loomed. What they had achieved was not only a victory over the virus but also the beginning of a new chapter, full of danger and challenges ahead. The Agerian fleet quietly left Earth's orbit, leaving behind a night sky glowing with countless satellites and human signal lights. Colonel Vorax stood in the command room, his eyes fixed on the image of Earth displayed on the 3D screen. The blue planet appeared small, yet it carried a significance that Veltrix had never truly understood before. In that moment, Colonel grasped something he had never fully realized in his lifetime. Sometimes strength does not lie in technology or knowledge, but in the ability to adapt to adversity, in those things Veltrix had once considered weakness, chaos, and uncontrollable. Before departing, Colonel decided to send a message to Lena Carter, captain of the Eclipse Voyager, who had been at the forefront of the human-Veltrix collaboration. He knew that these words were not merely an expression of gratitude but a recognition of a lesson that Veltrix needed to learn. When the message was transmitted, Carnal's image appeared on the screen in the Eclipse Voyager conference room. Standing before the human crew, he spoke in a calm but resolute tone. "Lena Carter, and all members of the Eclipse Voyager, I, Carnal Vorax, on behalf of Veltrix and our entire fleet, extend our deepest thanks. You have not only shared knowledge, but also given us a valuable lesson, that chaos, when combined with resilience, can become the key to survival. This hope, which originates from humanity, will spread throughout the galaxy." In the quiet room, Lena stared intently at Carnal's image. His gaze was no longer distant or full of authority, as it had been when they first met. Instead, it was a look of understanding and respect. As his image faded, applause erupted from the human crew. But for Lena, the words of thanks were not just for her or for this ship. They were for all of humanity. Veltrix had once regarded humans as a fragile, vulnerable species. Their technology, though far more advanced than many other civilizations, was still considered primitive and unsystematic. But Carnal had come to realize that it was this very imperfection that gave humanity a unique strength. Their chaotic immune system, instead of following rigid rules, constantly adapted. This had made the Nytherian virus, a nightmare for the entire galaxy, fail. But humanity's strength wasn't just biological. It was in their resilient spirit, their ability to unite, and their willingness to take great risks to protect life. Carnal recalled the moment Lena agreed to allow Veltrix to conduct research on human bodies. She had not hesitated, knowing full well the unpredictable dangers they might face. For Carnal, that was the pinnacle of courage. As the Agerian ship moved toward the planets ravaged by the Nytherian Plague, Veltrix held in its hands the most powerful weapon, Catalyst N01. But more than just a biological compound, it was a symbol of hope, a belief that life could overcome any challenge. Carnal gathered the entire fleet to announce this milestone. In his speech, he emphasized the role of humans in creating this medical miracle. His words were meant not only to inspire the Veltrix soldiers but to plant a seed of new thinking within his entire species. "We have learned from humans that there are no limits to survival if we know how to adapt. This is not only a victory over the Nytherian Plague, but also a reminder that this galaxy does not belong to anyone. We do not exist to dominate, but to protect each other." Carnal's words echoed through the communication channels, reaching every warship, every Veltrix research center. For many, it was the first time they realized that Veltrix was not the only species with the mission of maintaining peace. Hope now belonged not just to Veltrix, but to the entire galaxy. However, Carnal also understood that the spread of hope came with responsibility. Catalyst N01 was not just a lifesaver, it was also a tool that could be misused. What would happen if a civilization used it to create more dangerous viruses? Or worse, used it to control other species? These questions haunted Carnal, preventing him from feeling completely at ease. On the Eclipse Voyager, Lena Carter shared similar concerns. In a private conversation with Helen, she expressed her thoughts plainly. "We've given Veltrix a powerful tool. But do you think they'll use it for the right purpose?" Helen remained silent for a moment before answering. "We can't control everything. But at least we've done our part. And sometimes, hope is the only thing that keeps us moving forward." As the Agerian moved further away from Earth, leaving behind the dim glow of its lights, Carnal Vorax stood silently in the command room. For him, this was not just a successful mission, it was the beginning of a new journey, a journey where Veltrix was no longer at the center, but a part of a bigger picture, where all species had their own roles to play. In the vast expanse of space, among the twinkling stars, a new ray of hope had been ignited. And though the journey ahead might still hold many challenges, both humans and Veltrix knew that as long as they stood together, no obstacle would be insurmountable.